Hello and welcome to another edition of Service News. I'm Peter Tomlinson.
And I'm Angela Barlow. And in this edition we'll be covering adjustments to the Rover 800 automatic gearbox, car design and how it can help to save lives, engine tuning past and present, and the Service News competition, how to win yourself a video recorder.
But first, the automatic gearbox fitted to Rover 825i and Sterling models. Technical Bulletin Item 811 instructed everyone to check for correct adjustment of the selector cable on the 4AT gearbox. And in the last edition of Service News, we covered that selector cable adjustment. Now we'll concentrate on the kickdown cable and the importance of its adjustment. This has recently been highlighted on Technical Bulletin Item 936. When the throttle is pressed, the kickdown lever moves up, generating a separate hydraulic pressure in the gearbox called throttle pressure. It's this pressure which gives down changes when the throttle is pressed hard and delays up changing during moderate throttle openings. In the 4AT gearbox, throttle pressure performs an additional function. It increases the clamping force on the clutches during acceleration. So if the kickdown cable is too slack, the clutch clamping pressure will be too low during acceleration. So that's the basic function of the kickdown cable. Now to its adjustment. First of all, slide the cable boot up and hold the lever down. Now try to move the cable up and down. If you can move it, the cable's too slack. But if the cable tension increases while the lever's held down, the cable's too tight. To adjust it, loosen both cable lock nuts fully and hold the lever down while you pull gently up on the cable outer. Lightly pinch the top lock nut onto the bracket. While you're holding the top lock nut, tighten the bottom one. After adjustment, make sure there's no slack in the cable again. So, set the gearbox cables correctly and keep the car on the road. Safety has always played a prominent part in the design and manufacture of new cars. Right from the start, computerized equipment allows designers to carry out theoretical tests on the screen. Their accuracy saves time on prototype models. Then, impact tests like these show the engineers exactly how the vehicle structure reacts. Cameras are set up at different angles round the car, so it's easy to see how the crumple zone at the front and the seat belts in the passenger compartment perform. There's even a camera underneath the vehicle which records how the engine and underframe react on impact. One Rover 800 driver was unfortunate enough to have experienced an incident like this. Mr. Edwards had a collision in his Rover 825i. From these photographs you can see that although the front of the vehicle was subjected to a very heavy impact, the passenger compartment remained intact. Mr. Edwards said, although the windscreen was cracked, it stayed in place and no other glass was cracked or displaced. I think I owe my life to the construction of the car and the seatbelt. Mr. Edwards was so impressed by the way the Rover reacted that he took delivery of a new one from TT Motors of Chipping Sodbury in February this year. And now on to the Heritage Motor Museum at Syon Park in Brentford, Middlesex, where Angela was amongst a collection of historic British motor vehicles, finding some interesting stories from the past.
It was nearly 90 years ago that John Kemp Starley, co-founder of the Rover company, introduced his first motor vehicle, a motorcycle. Things went from strength to strength. This Imperial model, launched in 1911, was highly successful. It won events such as the ACU 6 Days Trial and it was used extensively by the Russian army in the First World War. But bikes took a back seat as cars took off in the popularity stakes. Of course, those were the days when petrol was more affordable. You didn't have to worry then about fuel economy. Mind you, for one man, petrol prices must have been a more serious consideration. Mr. Philby was the proud owner of this 1922 Austin 20 Tourer. He bought it when it was 10 years old for £33, and he then proceeded to drive it on a 37,000-mile round trip from London to Cape Town, return. What was even more amazing was that he managed the whole trip without serious incident or mechanical breakdown. One fascinating feature of these old cars is that you actually tuned the engine constantly as you drove along. Here on the steering wheel, you can see there are 3 levers. To alter the throttle, you use the air lever. For the air-fuel ratio, use the gas lever. And you even had to advance or retard the ignition timing manually. So you see, with all this control, the driver could make sure his car was running at its very best. All he needed was a good ear and a good feel for his car.
Angela there at Scion Park. And it's quite true that in the past, tuning operations were carried out by ear, with little or no need for sophisticated equipment. So why change now? The theory behind engine tuning has stayed pretty much the same: to adjust idle mixture and idle speed to a point at which the engine runs smoothly and economically at its optimum performance. Surely the tried and trusted methods are the best. Unfortunately not. As vehicles have progressed, the amount of fuel they use has decreased. So the tolerance band of mixture levels at which engines run efficiently has become smaller and more critical. So how do you go about tuning nowadays? Well, firstly, it's important to remember that ignition timing, valve clearances, the condition of spark plugs, and air leaks in the intake systems can all influence engine tuning. Now to the equipment. The only reliable way to tune a vehicle within today's fine tolerances is with the use of an infrared CO meter and a tachometer. Always check that these are correctly calibrated and warmed up, ready for immediate use when you need them. Idle CO settings are listed in the engine tuning data section of each repair manual, as well as the servicing data cards and sheets. Check the derivative and also the model year that the figures relate to. The values often change from year to year. Above all, make sure you're familiar with the tuning operation of the car before you start. Next, how do you bring an engine to normal operating temperature? The most common method is to run the engine while the car is stationary until the cooling fan cuts in. But this can cause abnormally high fuel temperatures. Also, since the transmission isn't fully warmed, idle speed can be affected. The best way to prepare a car for tuning is to take it on a road test for about 4 miles. When you return, don't switch the engine off. Try to complete the tuning process as soon as possible, and if the cooling fan cuts in, raise the engine speed to 2,000 revs per minute for 30 seconds, then complete the tune. Always bear in mind that engine tuning today is far more important than it ever was. It's essential to have the right tools for the job to keep today's cars running smoothly. A technical bulletin has been issued highlighting the correct tuning procedures for both fuel-injected and carbureted vehicles. A set of 10 engine tuning posters has been specially prepared to take any possible confusion out of tuning. They cover each type of engine and fuel system with a step-by-step guide on how to get the best results. Put these in a prominent place in the workshop and you'll always have the information to hand. As you'll know, since the advertising campaign on the Rover 200 series, sales of these cars have risen dramatically. Public perception of the 200 as a high-quality luxury car is, of course, justified. What they didn't know was how competitive the price was. And it's because the standards of production are so high that some customers notice even the smallest creaks and rattles that can sometimes occur. We talked about two of these in the last edition of Service News: the torque tube fouling the floor pan and excessive play in the steering rack damper. Since that programme, our engineers at Cowley, and you in the network, have highlighted a few more areas to investigate when tracking down an annoying creak, rattle or knock. A slight metallic clicking noise experienced when driving at low speeds over rough ground may be caused by the damper mounting plate tapping under the suspension turret. This can be cured by applying windscreen sealant on the upper face of the plate. A similar but slightly heavier knock may be produced by the metallastic bush in the mounting plate coming adrift. If so, replace the mounting plate assembly. Vehicles after VIN 878327 have a modified bush fitted. If the customer complains of a light creak or groan from the front suspension present only at low speeds, the probable cause is dry damper stem seals. Dampers with improved seal lubrication are available from Unipart. Cars were fitted with these new dampers on production from VIN 103114. If a car is brought in because a loud crack is heard whilst travelling over rough or potholed ground, check that the front suspension beam bolts are tightened to the revised torque given in Technical Bulletin Item 864. And lastly, if when travelling over rough ground or under heavy braking, the towing eyes contact the ground, reset the front suspension trim height to its upper limits.
The latest Service Insight video to be released is One for the Road, covering all aspects of the single-point fuel injection system fitted to the Rover 820E and SE. The programme describes the function and operation of the system, and then looks in more depth at how fuel delivery is affected by the air intake system and the fuel system itself. Finally, there's a guide to tuning and adjustments using the fast check units and co-best. The next Service Insight video coming your way will be on PGM-FI, an in-depth look at the fuel system fitted to the Rover 825 and Sterling models, so watch out for that. Finally, as promised, the Service News competition. First prize is a VHS video recorder, complete with infrared remote control and 5 blank cassettes. There are also 10 runners-up prizes for the next ones out of the hat. All you have to do is answer 6 questions and describe in not more than 50 words what you consider is the most important aspect of your job to ensure customer satisfaction. All the questions relate to service news programmes, so get your copies out and see what you can find. Right, here are the questions. First, which Metro model was used for the demonstration of heater adjustments? Second, all Fast Check 2 units possess an additional feature. What is it? Third, what are the main disadvantages of applying paint at too low a temperature? Fourth, which engine was fitted to the Montego used on the Speedo cable rerouting item? Fifth, on a Metro automatic, what is the usual cause of clutch flare on a 3rd to 4th gear change? And finally, when calibrating CO content on Rover 820E models, how does the Fast Check serial tester connect into the vehicle's system? So, those are the questions. All you have to do is write to us with the answers and, just as important, your role in customer satisfaction. Remember, not more than 50 words. And don't forget to include your name and dealership address. The answers will be judged by Roy Davis, UK Service Director. Here's the address to send them to. Service News, PO Box 29, Cowley, Oxford, OX4 2XB. The winners will be revealed in the next edition of Service News, so we'll see you then.